Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Delphi Economic Forum. I'm Sotiris Danezis, a war correspondent and foreign affairs commentator. I'm also a communications consultant, founder and managing director of Danezis Stories Communications Agency in Athens. As a moderator, I would like to introduce you our esteemed speakers for today. Mrs. Katrina Sammour, security and political analyst coming to Delphi from Jordan. Thank you very much for being here. Mr. Aziz Amin, fellow at Oxford Global Society think tank and research associate at the Brenthurst Foundation in UK. Professor of International Relations, Konstantinos Ifantis, President of the Institute of International Relations at the Panteion University in Athens. And of course, Mr. Spyridon Litsas, Professor of International Relations Theory at the University of Macedonia in Greece. Today we will discuss the issue of pandemics, wars, and the resurgence of radicalization in the Middle East, a quite broad issue and topic. Currently, the Middle East is characterized by escalating complexity in its various crises and conflicts that impact the entire region. Devastation in Syria, the disintegration of Iraq and Libya, the interactions with Iran, the ethnic and sectarian divides, the spread of jihadism, the confusion of Western policy in the region, and of course the ongoing Israeli-Palestinian conflict are symptoms and also the results of the growing complexity experienced by the Middle East. Most importantly, the region, I think, is experiencing an apocalyptic humanitarian crisis. UN Humanitarian Agency, I have a note here, admitted 2 months ago that the situation has never been worse since it began collating records back in 1991. Please allow me to start with the lady of the panel, Mrs. Sammour. And we'll start from the pandemics of the topic. COVID-19 has affected various countries differently. How did it affect Middle East, a region that is already burdened by economic and political strife?
Thank you. So the Middle East was affected by COVID-19 much like the rest of the world. The economy was the first thing to get hit. We had a decrease of exports, regional export, by 5%. Well, while we look at this number and might talk about recovery and plans for recovery, we need to understand that the Middle East has very different economic strength and power among its states. Jordan, for example, is an extremely small state with a very small economy that is focused and reliant on tourism. So, and Egypt as well. So these two countries were hit the most by the COVID-19 pandemic because there were no flights, there was no tourism, airports were shut down completely. And the idea that the tourism sector was completely shut down has exacerbated already existing structural problems within the labor market, specifically in tourism, agriculture, and infrastructure, because the majority of these, employment in these sectors is it's a day wage basis. So when the COVID-19 pandemic, we saw a big number of these people lose their daily wage, which is and increased in unemployment. I believe Jordanian unemployment in the second or third quarter of 2020 reached 29%, which has been the highest since 1993. We have not seen numbers like that. And following the COVID-19 pandemic and the 2020 lockdown, we saw youth unemployment increase for several quarters, reaching 50%. Now, this high youth unemployment is not only an economic problem, but also a security and political problem, because young people out of jobs, frustrated with their own lives and frustrated with the way the government has been dealing with the crisis, were more likely to go to protest, to demonstrate, to engage in informal politics or outside the system politics. Now, another issue was that we've seen in COVID-19, the governments expanded their reach. We had one of the strictest lockdowns in the world, but that came at the expense of the economy, specifically the small, micro and small businesses. We've seen them hit the most. And Jordan's private sector in general is largely compromised from the micro businesses. So we've seen a lot of these businesses lose their clientele, lose their capital, and we're still in the process of recovering from the COVID-19 pandemic. And just 2 years later, we had the Ukraine. The invasion of Ukraine, which also caused a lot of economic issues because of the disruption of the supply chains. So that exacerbated the problem, and also tourism sector was affected. We had a large number of Ukrainian and Russian tourists. Now we do not have that sector anymore. And all of this is to say is the reason why we had such a government expansion or power expansion is because we knew that our health infrastructure could not take it. So the only way to move forward to guarantee that we can still provide adequate healthcare to the population is by enforcing a lockdown. This all came on the expense of the economy. One of the two things that we are still yet to see the outcomes of COVID is the education, because a lot of schools went online. But unfortunately, that means a massive number of Jordanian students just missed out on a school year. Not everybody has access to a personal laptop. Not everybody has access to even a family laptop. They have smartphones, but the laptop ownership is very low in Jordan. So we've seen a lot of kids just fall behind, either miss classes or miss that semester completely. So we will not see these results now. We will see them in the coming few years. And to touch upon or to bring back the conversation to also radicalization, because of the strict lockdown, people started engaging more online and spending more of their time online.
We'll have more time to talk about radicalization and especially online. I would like to, as we look at the multiple ways in which the pandemic affected the Middle East, I think it's important to look also to the other critical events. The ongoing war in Gaza is, I think, the most significant threat to regional stability and human welfare, and I would like your comment on that.
The war in Gaza, that needs its own panel, and the effects of the war in Gaza. The way I see it is that we are witnessing right now in the Middle East a competition of two narratives. There is a force narrative and a peace narrative, and who is going to win? Jordan, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, UAE are modern states. These states are looking to engage in political process under the international umbrella to achieve goals, to achieve even justice and dignity and freedom for Palestinians through that process. And then you have other countries engaging in warfare, engaging in force or using force and adapting force to redraw lines and redraw borders. And right now, what we need to focus on is to make sure that the Middle East, the peace narrative wins in the Middle East and not the force narrative, because our young generation they're forming their political identity in the shadow of this war, and they are losing their trust in the international community. They are losing their trust in the rules-based order and how to achieve dignity for the Palestinians and a Palestinian state. And we do not want them to veer away from that process and start engaging in the force narrative. We need to bring them back to the peace narrative, and we can only do that by advancing a political solution, a peaceful solution to the conflict. It's not just Gaza. We need to talk about the two-state solution, how to have a Palestinian state and an Israeli state where they can live side by side in peace.
Thank you very much, Mr. Amin. I would like to move on to the recent Taliban victory in Afghanistan. How do you think the success of such a non-state actors influence other insurgent groups in the Middle East?
Well, thank you very much for having me, and thanks to the Delphi Forum for organizing this fantastic forum. and bringing people from all walks of life to discuss pressing issues around the world. When we talk about the Taliban victory in Afghanistan, in its influence that transcends borders, I would state it in 4 points. One is that it has emboldened non-state actors. The Taliban takeover paved the way for other non-state actors to learn from the success of the Taliban. It has not only influenced non-state actors in the Middle East, but also beyond that. Because the non-state actors believe that if a non-state actor in Afghanistan, such as the Taliban, defeated NATO and US with all technological, with all technology and powerful military equipments, I think they can definitely do it and force legitimate state actors within the international relations system to accept their illegitimate demands as well, number one. Number two is that it has also boosted the morale of violent non-state actors across the Middle East and beyond that. The narrative, the Taliban's narrative of defeating NATO resonates with many of the violent non-state actors in the Middle East, and of course in even the greater Middle East and beyond that, because it has increased the prestige as well as the influence as a tactical of Taliban as to their tactical and strategic approaches. For instance, the TTP, which is fighting in Pakistan to impose similar government and just like in Afghanistan, the Taliban did, have completely replicated the way on a structure-wise, organizational structure-wise, as well as media strategies from the Taliban. They were inspired by that. We take the example of the Jaish al-Adl. It has increased its activities in Iran, which is mostly influenced by the Taliban success in Afghanistan. We also take a note of which is, although it is primarily a nationalist movement, the Baloch Liberation Army, they have learned and adopted the tactics and boosted their morale through the success of the Taliban. And that was, they have formed a suicide brigade under the name of Majid Brigade, which has given a very tough time to the Pakistani security forces and have carried out numerous complex attacks across Pakistan, particularly in the Balochistan region, and inflicted heavy casualties on the Pakistani forces. Also, the Taliban victory have also influenced people such as the Hamas. I mean, another violent non-state actor. In an interview with the Al Jazeera Arabic, as well as with the Bakhtar news agency of the Taliban, Hamas spokesperson said that they took inspiration from the Taliban victory in Afghanistan, that they defeated, if they could defeat with all the military and technological force the Americans, they could do so with their adversaries in the Middle East, with Israel as well. And the last is the Houthis. They are also empowered and emboldened by the way the Taliban successes. For instance, although they have had success in achievements prior to the arrival of the Taliban, but their increased determination, it has increased their determination and their activities in the Bab al-Mandeb, a strait where they are challenging and disrupting trade activities, and they know the response would be very weak from their adversaries. Thank you.
Mr. Ifantis, do you agree? To what extent did the American evacuation of Afghanistan contributed to the re-emerging of jihadism as an international phenomenon in the Middle East?
How can you not agree with that? I mean, I fully concur with what Mr. Amin said about what victory meant, okay, and how it was operationalized, and how it has become a symbol of endurance and a symbol of facing off Western imperialism or neocolonialism or whatever you want to call it. That's certain, but forgive me for for thinking. Let me offer an example of how someone becomes radicalized. Okay, you see that timer there counting down? I want to smash it. And then war cry, victory. No, this is not a topic to be humorous about, but let me, the entire concept of radicalization, the entire concept of resurgence, the entire concept of, allow me to use the phrase Islamic revival, is quite complicated. We need a working assumption, and we don't have one, at least Westerners. We think we have one, but we don't, I'm afraid. But the concept is complicated, and it is complicated because it is charged with so many value-laden connotations. And these connotations can certainly obscure our perceptions, especially in the West. And it is not only the way or the manner in which it is theoretically framed, but it is also the way it has been framed by Western history and social science. By definition, I'm an Orientalist, so I see the phenomenon. I try to explain a social phenomenon like that through lenses that can be distorting of reality, and the literature is vast. In short, if we are talking about a movement, then it is a movement growing out of objective structural contradictions. And these contradictions are to be found within, how can I put it, within historically developing, crisis-ridden and conflict-bedeviled regions, especially in the Middle East. And this is important to remember. So Afghanistan, like Iraq before Afghanistan, or about the same time, are instrumental. And they are some of the basic Afghanistan victory, occupation, the social unrest, the attempt by Westerners to append the traditional values communities there. So the basic source of contradiction and conflicts in such societies is the existence of a disjuncture where radical movements and their teleological ideals came and are coming, actually, as we speak, into discord with existing and supposedly non-Islamic conditions of social injustice, of political despotism, of infidelity. And this is what we had in Afghanistan before the American intervention, during the American intervention, and after that. And as I said, it's not just Afghanistan, it's Iraq as well, it's Syria. It's everywhere that we can find the combination of domestic sources of radicalization with the Western attempt to impose values that are resisted by the local communities.
Thank you very much. Mr. Litsas, how your new theory on smart states may function as a way for a better understanding of the re-emergence of jihadi groups in the Middle East and beyond.
Thank you, Mr. Danezis. First of all, I would like to to give a big shout out to all of you who are here that early in the morning. My students as well. I mean, you know, you had to be here, so. All right, so smart states theory. Among other variables, a smart state, or, let me rephrase, a smart foreign policy, is a policy that is being made in accordance with the international environment, or in other words, in accordance with systemic polarity on the one hand. And on the other hand, if you are proactive in the international environment. So in general, smart state theory suggests that we should put history aside and we should focus on international politics at the present. So in reality, if we see the big picture, once again, I'm always referring to the big picture, we may see that jihadism is targeting all those smart moves that have been taken recently in the international scene, and in particular the Middle East. The Abraham Accords, which is the smartest decision that had been taken, you know, a game changer, a de jure game changer, if I may use that specific term, between two smart states, UAE, Israel, under the supervision of another smart state, the United States of America, had been targeted indirectly with Hamas terrorist attack against Israel. And at the same time, we all know that Hamas tried to prevent a new Abraham Accords, this time between Israel and Saudi Arabia. So, you know, another smart move had been tackled by, a jihadi attack. So in reality, jihadism doesn't like, the modernization in foreign policy. It tries to maintain things in a more Kantian way, if I may use that specific term, where violence and, rawness in general prevails. This is where, smart states, they have to stand up, and they have to stand up, in a more vocal way and proactive way in order to minimize, all these actions.
Mrs. Sammour, do you agree?
I do agree. I think we need to understand the shift that has happened within and to jihadi groups, specifically groups like Al-Qaeda and ISIS. The new trends in radicalization, and while they are using more advanced technological methods to recruit, they are still relying on the fickleness of foreign policy, whether it's in the Middle East or in the wider international stage. We've noticed that groups such as ISIS and Al-Qaeda have been using Taliban as a model. Basically, as I said, the force narrative, where you can fight and stay on the ground. All you need to do is survive, and eventually you will achieve victory. And they are doing this, and they're using that lesson from Afghanistan to message young kids, to promise them the victory, to promise them that their sacrifice is not going in vain, that eventually there will be, eventually we will achieve the goal, which is the liberation of the Muslim world, or the establishment of the Caliphate, of the Khilafah al-Islamiyya. Now, the thing that we need to understand is that the way that the people they are targeting is becoming different, and everything we knew about radicalization, does no longer, or is irrelevant. It doesn't matter anymore.
It's evolving.
It's evolved in a very dangerous way. And everything that I'm going to say now, it's not Jordan specific, it's not Middle East specific, it is international. And I will start with the most concerning part, which is ISIS and how they recruit. So ISIS is not looking for cadres or members. ISIS right now is looking for tools to achieve violence and chaos. And they are targeting the most vulnerable in society, which are young people, as young as 14, 15, 16.
Through the internet?
From the
internet.
internet.
The digital landscape?
Yes, they are using specifically Telegram channels. Like the Telegram has become the new hub for ISIS manuals, as I call it. So they do not actively recruit anymore. They wait until a young person engages with certain videos, with certain content online, and then they slowly start having a conversation with them. And they never say, I'm ISIS, you're going to join ISIS. They're not asking them to declare any alliances to any group. What they're saying to them is, well, and they start very small. Like they say, well, maybe you should share this content, maybe share this post, maybe share this video. Let me teach you how to be a content creator. But as the time goes on, the tasks become more and more sinister. One of the cases, one of the young men that I interviewed who was not older than 16 years old, that's how it started. He watched the video, he liked the video, the moderator started communicating with him. Within 3 months, this young guy was ready to blow himself up and carry out a suicide attack. Why is ISIS targeting the younger population? Well, because it's easy. They're emotional, they're very impulsive, and they're easy to radicalize than the older generation. And this puts us in a very complicated situation because we cannot profile them. In a recent piece I wrote about this, the new trends in radicalization, I called it young, invisible, and online. They are very young. It's very hard to profile someone who can't grow a beard, to be honest. I know it's a cliche, but it's part of the profile. They are invisible, they're encouraged, they're discouraged from attending mosques or any religious classes like we saw before. Like there is no on-ground recruitment. They want them isolated, they hold them captive online, they're a captive audience. And they're invisible. You cannot, because they're not attending these groups, because they're not affiliating themselves with people of interest, let's say, it's very hard for us to profile and try to prevent them. The youngest person we've had being radicalized by ISIS, and when I say radicalized, I'm not saying this person was watching online videos. These kids are being apprehended on their way to carry out attacks. So he was 14. And what do we do with them? Like, we do not have an idea of what to do next. Like, they are in juvenile detention. What kind of de-radicalization program do we need? It's a new, completely different age of radicalization and de-radicalization and profiling and push and pull factors. You know, before we saw young men, I worked on radicalization for 10 years now. Before we would have epicenters of radicalization, we would know like high unemployment, no place in society, angry about political disengagement. 15 and 16-year-olds don't have that. They don't have to worry about employment. They're not worried about their place in society because they don't have one yet. And they don't, and they're not part of the political process. They don't vote. They don't join political parties. So our entire understanding of the radicalization process is born anew now with the ISIS method. Al-Qaeda is looking for converts. Al-Qaeda is using Gaza, for example, to rebrand itself because it lost a lot of its appeal, unfortunately. ISIS took the spotlight from them. So Al-Qaeda is using this to bring its name back and appeal to younger generation to join their ranks. And then you have Iran and Iranian proxies that are looking for agents of chaos within countries like Jordan and Egypt specifically. Because if you look at Lebanon, Syria, and Iraq, these are fields of operation. These are not pressure points. Jordan and Egypt are pressure points, specifically to Israel and the West Bank and Gaza. So what they're doing is they're creating these different messaging campaigns to disengage and further remove the population, the young people, from their leadership, from the international community and the international process, to make sure it can manipulate the protests or make sure it can manipulate the domestic scene within these countries in its favor, to use it as a pressure tool on not only the international community, but on the border area. And one of the most, to go back to radicalization, one of the most dangerous things that I've seen was how easy it is to access very dangerous material within a week. And I've just started the research, and within a week, I learned how to make explosives, which firearm to use, what kind of targets I need to choose, how to scout certain targets, what kind of, and they go into specifics. They have pictures, the manuals have pictures, the manuals have, and everything is available in the regular market. Nothing will basically raise a red flag with authorities. And it costs me, like when I looked at the materials that we needed to use for an explosive, it cost me around 35 JDs, which is almost $50, $60. And these are young people that are being exposed to this, and it only took me a week.
How successful are these methods?
And so I'm very grateful for Jordanian authorities. We have had a very successful track record in preventing and stopping these type of attacks. But if you want an approximate number, in Jordan, since the start of the war on Gaza, or from October 7th until today, Jordan has stopped around 10 confirmed attacks. It wasn't in the planning stage. It was somebody on the way to commit that attack. Think about it. It's 2 attacks per month, basically. So it's very successful. If that answers your question, I believe it's very successful. Only one or two of these attacks, if it happened, it can hurt Jordanian. It will, of course, hurt the stability of Jordan, but it will hurt the tourist sector that we rely upon. And it can inspire others to carry it out. And as I said, this is not a Jordan problem, it's an international problem. I've been talking to my European counterparts about this, and they are noticing the same trend. Only 2 days ago or 3 days ago, German authorities apprehended teenagers on their way to, I don't know if they were carrying out a stabbing or something more complex, but this happened. In Denmark, it happened. In Croatia, it's happening. Everywhere, this is a new trend of ISIS. It's not asking people to donate money or to travel to Syria or to travel anywhere. They just want these young kids that are very impulsive, that are, their prefrontal cortex is not developed. This is why. And they're using them as tools and as weapons. They're weaponizing our children against us, basically.
Mr. Aziz, how have the actions of states like Russia, Iran, and China contribute to the radicalization of individuals and groups in the Middle East?
Sorry, pardon your question.
How have the actions of other states, of Russia, of Iran, of China, contribute to the radicalization of individuals and groups in the Middle East?
Well, when we look at as Katrina said, and of course, Mr. Ifantis said, the policies, when states pursue policies of supporting non-state actors as a tool of foreign policy, they definitely take and make better use of the non-state actors and particularly when we look into the Middle East, we take the example of Iran that has been supporting non-state actors both in Syria as well as in the Houthis in Yemen. And in Syria, of course, they were supporting various non-state actors, including forming brigade of the Zainabun as well as the Fatimun, that were made of the fighters from Pakistan in Afghanistan. Similarly, the war in Gaza, we cannot exclude that. It has also been playing a very significant role in terms of radicalizing youth across the Middle East. The third thing that I would like to shed light on is the role of the Western countries, particularly their silence of how the war is being carried out in Israel by Israel in Gaza, how it is contributing significantly into the already socially excluded, poverty-stricken, and unemployed youth across the Middle East. According to UNDP, almost 25 to 30% of the 20 to 25% of the youth have the potential to be radicalized in the Middle East. So the war in Gaza is contributing significantly because the Western community, the Western world, once used to propagate the value-based international system of human rights, human rights, and rights for civilians in conflict. But as we see that the war drags on, it is not only putting the Middle Eastern countries between a hard place and a rock, but also significantly contributing to the recruitment of the radicalized groups such as the Daesh, other Takfirist group, the Al-Qaeda, which ran out of manpower, is on the verge of recruiting people. And third is that it is also putting pressure on the countries that once spend all their energy, such as the Saudi Arabia, the Jordan, and UAE, all their energy on positive developments. But now they're using all their energy and resources and time to stop the conflict from dragging it on. Because they are facing pressure from two fronts. One is that from the internal, from the domestic. We see that domestic in Jordan, there has been protests for the past 1 week. And similarly, the Saudis, which is considered to be the home to two holy sites of Muslims, 2 billion Muslims, they are also considering, being under pressure, not only from the internal Muslims, a huge population, but also from the 2 billion Muslims, that why they are not taking actions. And the third is the UAE, United Arab Emirates. It is also being exposed to a lot of pressure both from the internal as well as from the external. So I believe state both states as well as non-state actors have been contributing to the radicalization, but and it comes at the expense of global security. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Mr. Ifantis, the Arab world counts at least 4 failed states, Libya, Syria, Iraq, Yemen. One may say that this is the perfect breeding ground for young jihadists. What is the strategy of the West to tackle jihadism, if there is any?
Well, yes and no to the first part of your question. Failed states, yes, there are in the Arab world, in the Muslim world, and there are elsewhere as well. We have to always keep in mind that the concept of failed state is a Western and American concept, and I don't mean to discard it because of that. On the contrary, but it is the failure to function, the failure to provide at least the bare necessities of its citizens, of its populace, and that generates discord. The European history is full of this kind of revolutionary upheavals in the last 3 or 4 centuries. So yes, it is a fertile ground for recruiting disenfranchised, especially youth. And I think our co-panelists here, they gave a powerful expose and comment on the structural problems and the structural sources of radicalization. So yes, apart from the ideological, apart from the theological sources or terms, thinking of these radicalized agents, terrorist groups like ISIS, like Al-Qaeda, like the Islamic Jihad, thinking in ideological terms offers one explanation of the phenomenon, but to understand its emergence and appeal, one also has to look at the brutal political, economic, social realities of states like Libya. And of course, let me now come to the issue of strategy. And it is so hard. Strategic thinking will not save us, let me put it that way. And why it will not save us? Because again, it is what is strategic thinking is the generation of ideas, of concepts, and action, and then of policies. But these ideas, concepts, and policies have no appeal into the pockets of radicalized communities. So I'm at a loss here. There is deterrence to the extent that it works, and it does not work when perpetrators of terrorism, terrorist acts are devoid of the basic survival instinct. You cannot deter them. Prevention, we have failed to come up with ideas and frameworks, political and social frameworks to combat radicalization. And so the only thing we have to do is to try and understand and address the fundamental roots of the problem. And I think this is not, or at least it is not just a Western task, but it is a task by the communities and the regimes themselves, and that somehow they have to be empowered in that context.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Litsas, how can we tackle the growing threat of jihadism? I would like an answer from you in the next 2 minutes. So we're going to have a last round of 30 seconds.
So I have the 1 million question and, in 2 minutes. All right. It's important for us to understand jihadism in reality. I mean, 9/11 unfortunately gave us the opportunity in order to study the operational dimension of jihadism. But still, I believe that we are missing the details. For example, we are missing the fact that jihadism, it's a blend, it's an amalgamation of a political ideology, but at the same time is an aspect of religion. And, jihadism does not refer just, to Salafism, in other words, to Sunni Islam. There is the eschatological dimension of Shia Islam that, is being revealed nowadays, through the Shia Crescent in the whole of the Middle East, and Hezbollah, obviously, the proxy of Iran. So in order for us to understand that, we have to see both the political dimension, the metaphysical dimension, at the same time, to try to give solutions in a socio-economic and political problem. Because since the fact that, we are in Delphi and there is, the title of the transition, the globe is in transition and not everybody has a place in this new world that is being constructed. Some people that are trying to find, solutions by being the useful idiots, if I may use the word, of jihadism, is because, they don't know about what jihadism is all about, or they are trying to find, their own position. I'm not suggesting that this is a justification of their, dreary act, but, we have to study that and we have to offer solutions to the low socioeconomic standards that, in some parts of the world still prevail.
I don't know if we have any more time just for a third 30 seconds round and a final comment. I would like to start with you. Final comment, the recent developments, what the future holds, especially now that an Iranian threat towards Israel is imminent.
Yeah, I'm optimistic. I believe, that, Iranians, they are not going to be, they're just going to be vocal, but they are not going to unleash hell. They are not going to open the Pandora's box. And hopefully, there is going to be settlement in Gaza as well. After all, Israel, as I said, UAE as well, they are smart states, so, they have to offer solutions.
Mr. Ifantis?
Well, just in, back in 2017, I credited a volume on the imbroglio in the Middle East because of Syria. And now we are still, counting another upheaval, another havoc. If you look at what is going on, it is the same thing over and over again. Okay, it is Western intervention. It is the hatred for the West domestically, at some not universal. It's the hatred of the Jews. It's the Jewish or the Israeli use of force, which is highly unproportional. So it is dangerous. But my hope is that actors there, most of them remain rational, and they will somehow contain the spillover.
Mr. Amin?
Yeah, I think it needs a multifaceted approach. One is first is the ending of Gaza war is extremely important to stop the factory of producing radical elements across the Middle East and beyond that one. Second is the working with regional actors. They are sane actors, they understand the region. Saudi and UAE understood the threat that emanated from Yemen in 2015, but the West did not pay heed. And now we see that the US and UK now realize that, okay, there is, since they have been interrupting trade in the Bab al-Mandeb Strait, they in the Saudi and UAE did not support it because those times they were seeking the support of these elements. The third is, I think both the international community and the regional actors need to work together and through the by including the element of social determinism in their policy, and that is through working both through that also has the elements and factors of the political, economic as well as cultural factors, where regional governments could be helped in certain ways so that the people who are socially excluded and poverty-stricken should not be radicalized by the radical groups. Yeah.
That's very important. Last remark from you.
I would
Let's
be very
close
quick,
with something
yes.
optimistic.
I'm scared I don't have it.
I know it's a wishful thinking.
I would say that I would recommend we need to stop following headlines and follow trends, because in the Middle East we get very engaged in headlines. What is Iran doing? Is Iran going to strike? Is Iran not going to strike? The real danger and the real threat to the modern states of the Middle East, whether it's Jordan, Saudi Arabia, or UAE, or Egypt, is the trends. We have trends of radicalization, we have trends of non-state actors, the rise of non-state actors, and we have trends of climate change and the shifting global order. So if we can just refocus our attention on these trends and have start to come up with whether policies within the regional actors and international policy towards these trends, we can have a better future. We can hope for a better future in the Middle East.
That's a hopeful message. Thank you very much, all of you. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.